Hello, today I will be doing a tutorial on IRI's RowGen and some basic capabilities it provides to get you started on your own jobs. This video will go into detail on synthesizing realistic data inside a database using RowGen created set files. If you're looking for a more in-depth look at RowGen or any of our other products, there will be a link in the description to our website and blog. This is also under the pretense that you already have a database connection set up, and if you need help with that, there will be a link to a tutorial video on that in the description as well. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and create a new IRI project. You can either do that through here, or you can go to File, New IRI Project, and we're just going to call this one RowGen. And I'm going to untick the populate library with data classes since we're going to be creating our own. Alright, so now we have our project set up. I'm going to go ahead and show you the database and table that we're going to be working in. So under my Oracle main, schemas, and then my IRI schema right here, you see a table called RowGen demo. And I'm going to go ahead and sample the contents for you just to show you it's empty. So from here, we have to go ahead and go to our IRI library. From here, this allows us to create data classes and create rules. So first things first is we're going to go ahead and create a new rule. Going to go ahead and select Add, Data Rules. We'll click Next. We'll scroll down to Generation since that's what we're going to be doing. And just to give you another idea of what we're doing exactly, I'm trying to populate this employee ID, employee name, and this RMP job with data. So under the generation, we're going to go ahead and do the set file selection. And for the rule name, I'm going to call this one the EMP name. So I'll just call it name because that's the one that we're filling up. We'll click next. And it's looking for a set file. So we'll go ahead and select browse. And this is actually our pre-populated, which comes with all of our downloads of set files that we created that you are able to use. So I'll go into the names last, comma first. I'll select open, and I'll select finish. So now that's done, we have a generation rule called name. And now we need a data class in order to apply that. So we'll go ahead and go back to the library. We'll select new data class. We'll give this a name of EMP underscore name. We'll click OK. And as you can see here, it populated. So now it's looking for a default rule. And we created one earlier called name. So we're going to go ahead and use that. And for the location matcher, we're going to go ahead and just type in exactly this EMP name since it uses a regex pattern to match. So we'll go ahead and just name this name, and in the pattern, we just want to make sure that it matches exactly what we want it to match on for the column. As you can see here, these two are correct, and we'll select OK. So just like that, we now have a data class called employee name that matches on employee name column, and with a default rule of generating data based on a set file that we gave it. So now we have two other columns that we have to fill. So we'll go ahead and go to our RowGen menu, which is this little icon. We'll go ahead and drop down, new set file, and these give you a pretty big list of things that you can use to create items with or set files. But we're going to go ahead and only use two for today. So the first one is going to be the compound data values. And as you can see, it says create a set file by combining generated components and literal values. So we'll go ahead and select next. And I'm just going to leave this as default. We'll click next again. And it's going to generate 100 rows. So if you were doing more than 100, you should probably do more, especially since we're going to be making them sorted and unique. But for now, we're just going to leave it as 100. We're going to click next, and this is where we're going to add to our components. So we'll go ahead and select add, and I'm going to make a literal string value called ID. We'll click finish, and as you can see here under the example, this is what it's going to generate so far, but since we only have a literal value called ID, that's all it's going to generate. So now I have to add the numbers that correspond with their ID numbers. So we'll select add again. We'll go to generated value, name, I'm just going to call this num, and under the method, I'm going to change that to number or date in a range. As you can see here, it kind of gives us an error saying range method is only available for specific types. So we'll go ahead and change this to a numeric. We'll select next again, and size, I'm going to change that to 4 just because I like the way it looks. Precision is going to be 0 since there's no decimals, and minimum size, I'm going to change that to 4 to make sure that it stays in a static 4 numbers. We'll select next again. As you can see here, the minimum value goes to -1000, but I'm just going to change that to positive since in an ID it's going to have no negative numbers. So we'll go ahead and select finish, and we'll select generate, and as you can see here, it's giving us multiple different examples of what our generated values are going to look like, and they all look exactly how I want them to, where they're all 4 numbers long with ID in front. So we'll go ahead and select finish. And as you can see over here, we created a sourcel file, a RCL file to be more specific, and it actually ran that for us and created this set file right here. And these are all the values that were generated that we are now able to use. So that was extremely customizable for you to use whatever best fits you and your ID numbers or whatever data you're looking to create. But we still have one more column that we have to do, which is this RMP job. So we're going to go ahead and go into the RowGen menu, the drop down, new set file. So with this new wizard popped up, we're going to go ahead and select our next option, which is going to be the range or literal values. As you can see here, it says create a new set file based on literal values or values selected from a range. So we'll go ahead and select next. We'll go ahead and select next once again. I'm just going to leave this all as default. All right, and here you can change the data type if you'd like. I'm going to leave that as is. And we're going to be working in the literal entry section. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and add a few jobs. So I'm going to do carpenter, add, manager, accountant, and engineer. All right, so we have now added all 4 of those to our list, and as you can see under the preview, these are all the ones that we created. Now, if you want this weighted, what you can do here in this specific wizard is you can go ahead and just add a few more entries. So let's say that if carpenters made up the majority of your workforce, you can go ahead and just add a few more carpenters right here in this literal entry tab, add them to the table, and it would be weighted for carpenters and therefore select more of them when you're adding it to the database. But for now, I'm okay with this, so we'll go ahead and select finish. Okay, and as you can see here, we now have a new range dot set, and this just created a set file with these literal entries that we created. All right, so now what we have to do is now we have to go back to our IRI library and make 2 more data classes and 2 more rules. So we'll go ahead and make the rules first. So we'll go ahead and select add for the rules, data rules, and generation, set file generation. Going to change this name to ID. We'll click next, and it's looking for a set file, but we used RowGen in order to create them. So the ID is going to be this compound data values if you don't remember. So we'll select browse. And the location of where these files are going to be located is actually right at the top here. You can see the location just in case you're curious. So for me, it's going to be C users, Tyler, Eclipse workspace, runtime, new configuration. But instead of going through all of that, I just went ahead and saved you the trouble and just copied the path for myself. And then I'm going to go into my RowGen project here. And I'm going to be looking for this compound data values. So we'll select it, we'll select OK, and we'll select finish. So now we have an ID rule of generation. So we need one more for this RMP job. We'll select next, and we'll scroll down to generation, set file generation, and change the name to RMP. Actually, we'll just change it to job to make it easier. We'll select next, and again, it's looking for the set file in the same location where we grabbed the other one. And this one is going to be the new range dot set. We'll select open and finish. Okay, so now we have these two other rules, this ID rule and this job rule. And the job rule is connected to this new range, and the ID is connected to this compound data values. So now we need to create two more data classes that match on to what we're looking for and that has those rules we created. So we'll go ahead and select a new data class. We'll call this one EMP underscore ID. We'll select OK. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing for this RMP job. RMP underscore job. Okay. And from here, we're going to go ahead and go to our default rule and change that to our ID. And under the location matcher, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did for the employee name. We're changing the rule, adding the matcher. So we'll go ahead and select a location matcher. We'll select add, and we'll call this one ID. And the pattern, again, is just a regex pattern. So EMP underscore ID to match exactly onto this. We'll select OK. And as you can see, this is why it's important to name everything that matches, because it could get quite confusing if you just left them as very basic or generic names, and you wouldn't really be able to remember like which rule went to what and things like that. And it would be a lot harder to match on the correct column that you want to match on with the correct data that you're trying to add. So now we'll go into the RMP job, default rule of job, and the location matcher. We'll just call this one job, and RMP underscore job to match here. We'll select OK. And just like that, we now have three data classes with three separate generation rules, and they all should match onto one specific column that will then populate that with data. So now we are on to doing the actual RowGen job in order to populate that data. So we'll go ahead and select the drop-down menu for RowGen, and we'll do a new database test data job. Okay, we're going to go ahead and leave everything as default. We'll select next. And these are where the data classes that we created are going to populate. So we have our name, ID, and job that they all have their rules of generation. So we'll go ahead and select next because we want to use all of those. Our connection profile, again, we're working under Oracle main and under IRI and RowGen demo, which is going to be right here. I'll just go ahead and select next. And it's going to ask how many rows it wants to generate. I'm just going to do 20. And then loader, ODBC. Since the table is empty, there's no need to truncate the table, so we'll just leave that unticked. And we'll select finish. If there was data inside of the table, you would want to truncate it, and that will get rid of it before. So we'll select finish. And as you can see over here, we have a new batch project, and that is what is generated from this RowGen right here. So once it finishes, we'll go ahead and open it up, and it just gives us a little diagram of what's happening. So we'll go ahead and open up this .rcl and this .batch folder. So this .rcl is just going to tell SourceCL kind of what's happening and what's going on. And this just gives you a little bit more customizability if you know what you're doing in this field, but that's for a different video. So we'll go ahead and look at the new batch, and this is just a simple batch file that's just going to run if there was more files to run, but we're just going to go ahead and run the batch anyway. It's just good practice. So we'll do the run as and a batch program for the new underscore dot batch. Okay, and this is going to go ahead and run the job. And as you can see here, is going to say job ended. So first things first is I'm going to go over here into my Oracle main, schemas, IRI, and RowGen demo, and we'll go ahead and go to data, sample contents. And as you can see here, the data has been populated. It has generated 20 different rows with different names and some RMP jobs that we created with some random employee IDs. So this gives you just a very good idea of the realistic data that it can provide without you using actual data. And this can be done with testing purposes, or this can be done just to help you get confident using the IRI workbench and the other products that are here. It can create a test database for you very simply and allows you to just have a lot more flexibility in the things that you're able to do. If you happen to run this job correctly and the job finished without any problems and this is still empty, sometimes what you have to do is you have to go up to your database, disconnect from it, and then reconnect. And that has happened to me a few times, but just in case, you might have to do that. Other than that, you have just completed your first RowGen demo.